Hi everyone, this is Sam with Wine News in 5. Today we'll discuss lawsuits against the Trump administration's tariffs, new maps for Marlborough, Chile's 2025 harvest, the Albeisa Consorzio lightweighting wine bottles, and new research on the power of soil microorganisms to control downy mildew. Starting with a win in the fight against the Trump administration's tariffs. During April 19th's newscast, I mentioned that the Liberty Justice Center had filed a lawsuit against the Trump administration, challenging their authority to issue worldwide tariffs without congressional approval. That suit was filed on behalf of 5 businesses, one of which is New York-based wine importer VOS Selections. Following that, 12 U.S. states filed a similar lawsuit. On Wednesday, May 28th, the U.S. Court of International Trade ruled that the U.S. Constitution gives Congress exclusive authority to regulate trade with other countries, which is not overridden by the emergency powers invoked by Trump, whose use of tariffs is, and I quote, impermissible not because it is unwise or ineffective, but because federal law does not allow it. The court issued a permanent injunction on the blanket tariff orders and invalidated, effective immediately, all tariff orders issued since January that were justified under the International Emergency Economic Powers Act. Within minutes, the Trump administration issued an appeal and asked the court to pause any enforcement of the ruling while the appeals process played out. The next day, May 29th, the U.S. Court of Appeals granted the Trump administration's request to pause enforcement. They will now consider the ruling, and in all likelihood, this will end up with the U.S. Supreme Court. I'm now going to skip over Trump's threats of 50% tariffs on EU goods, which he made last Friday, May 23rd, because with the Court of International Trade ruling, I no longer have any idea what we can expect. On to Marlborough's maps. On May 29th, Appellation Marlborough Wine, AMW, launched an interactive online map that details the regions of Marlborough. For each region, information on geography, climate, soil, viticulture, and wine characteristics is given. As an example, if you click into the Wairau Valley, you can then delve deeper to explore the Upper Wairau, the Lower Wairau, the Central Wairau, or the Southern Valleys. If you then click into the Southern Valleys, the site provides a list of important areas within the subregion. It'll also tell you that the most significant soil type is low fertility clay, that the north-south orientation of the valleys blocks much of the maritime influence of the Pacific Ocean, and so many more pieces of information. If you love Marlborough, or if you're just a giant map nerd like me, I recommend checking it out. Next, Chile's 2025 harvest. If you haven't already read Amanda Barnes' MW's report on Chile's 2025 harvest, you should go take a look at it. Yields look to be down around 20% nationwide due to spring frost and strong winds during fruit set. Central Chile saw heat spikes in January and February, and rains and cooler temperatures in March, which created a split in harvest dates, which is similar to that which Barnes reported on for Argentina's 2025 vintage. Southern Chile saw heavy rains prior to harvest, and the bright spot seems to be that the vintage in northern Chile was one of the best vintages in memory with larger than average yields. Next, Albeisa Consorzio lightweighting wine bottles. The Albeisa Consorzio is a nonprofit that was founded in 1973 to promote the wines of Italy's Langhe and Roero regions. All 318 members, which include some of the most famous names in Barolo and Barbaresco, agree to use a standardized bottle that represents the region. The traditional bottle weighs 575 grams. In 2007, the Consorzio created an alternative bottle with a weight of 450 grams, which allows producers to choose to reduce their carbon emissions by 22% while retaining their Consorzio membership. On May 20th, Wine Searcher reported that the Consorzio had decided to introduce a third alternative weighing 410 grams. Producers who use this bottle will see a further 9% reduction in carbon emissions. This is great news. Heavy glass doesn't indicate better wine, and more producers who commit to reducing glass bottle weight, the better off the planet will be. Finally, new research on the power of soil microorganisms to control downy mildew. Downy mildew is one of the most pervasive diseases affecting grapevines, and if it's left untreated, it impairs photosynthesis, it reduces yield and quality of fruit, and it can completely defoliate a vine. It's also possible for the infection to overwinter in the soil and reinfect a vineyard the year following. A study conducted by Paula Fournier and colleagues at the National Research Institute for Agriculture, Food and Environment in France found that the abundance of certain soil fungi and bacteria in topsoils is directly correlated to lower incidence of downy mildew. They found that both incidence and severity of downy mildew can be predicted with higher accuracy by looking at soils than by analyzing the microbiology present on leaves. Fournier was quoted by Vitisphere as saying, "Most of the differentiating fungi we identified in the leaves belong to the category of basidiomycete yeasts already well known and used as biological control agents that compete for nutrients and space with diseases affecting harvested fruit." In the soil, we also found bacteria already described as antagonists of vine phytopathogens, such as the genera Streptomyces, Bacillus, or Pseudomonas. And Fournier and team's research is now being used to isolate certain benign fungi and bacteria for use in the development of biological control products. This is really awesome. However, I'd also like to point out that while the research might be new, certain producers have known this for ages. Producers practicing biodynamic and organic agriculture often use compost teas and soil preparations for exactly this reason. By growing a population of beneficial microorganisms and inoculating their vineyards with them, they are fighting harmful fungi, oomycetes, and bacteria. That's all for this episode of the Wine News. If you enjoy this newscast and you'd like to see it continue, please subscribe to jancesrobinson.com. And if you have news in your area, please email me at news@jancesrobinson.com. Thanks.